Good morning, scholars. Welcome back to the Kemet Maasai Academy. This morning we're going to be looking at temperature, how we measure temperature, why we measure temperature, what we use to measure temperature, everything having to do with temperature. So let's look at the definition of temperature. Temperature is the degree of hotness or coldness of a substance. So basically we're saying how hot is the thing, how cold is the thing. That's the temperature of a substance, how hot or cold it is. We use a thermometer to measure temperature. So this is an example of a thermometer. This is a digital thermometer, right? So you would turn it on. There's no battery in this one now. So it has a tiny battery that you would put in it, and you would press the button and you would see the reading on the screen. So it will give you the reading in the two scales. So two scales used to measure temperature are degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. Now there is another scale, degrees Kelvin, which is used in chemistry also. So on the digital thermometer, you will see on the screen the reading in Celsius, degrees Celsius, and then you press again if you want the reading in degrees Fahrenheit. So this is a digital thermometer. On the board I've also drawn an analog thermometer, which I'll explain in a minute. So the two scales that are typically used to measure temperature in degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. So there are different types of thermometers. So like I said, this is a digital thermometer, so it gives you the readings in digits, in decimals. Decimals are whole numbers. And we have the analog thermometer, which gives you the readings in, it's similar to how you'd have a digital clock and the analog clock, where you'd have to manually take the reading on the analog clock, and the digital just gives it to you straight in decimal or whole numbers. So on the analog, you'll have to go, and there's a fluid inside the analog. So used to be widely used was mercury, a mercury thermometer, because mercury, we call it quicksilver because of how it responds to, it moves very fast, right? And especially it responds to heat quite quickly. So it was called quicksilver, but mercury is a very dangerous substance to work with. There is mercury poisoning. It can cause brain damage if you're exposed to it over a period of time. So it's a dangerous substance to use. So for example, if the thermometer got broken and the mercury got spilled, and it's difficult to gather it up because, as the name suggests, it moves very fast, quicksilver, right? And exposure to it can cause brain damage. So mercury has, in a lot of cases, been replaced with alcohol, and the alcohol is usually colored, dyed, so that you can take the reading easily. So whatever liquid is used in the thermometer, it would expand very quickly when heated, when exposed to heat or change in temperature. And it would rise up the tube. You would see the liquid rising up the tube. And then when it stops, that means that's the temperature that is recording. And you would take the reading. So either on the Celsius scale or the Fahrenheit scale, you would take the reading. Now we have different ways of measuring the temperature. So if you're using the digital thermometer, you will notice that at the end of it, there's a metal. So metals respond very quickly to heat. So whether you're taking the temperature under your arm, so you'd place it inside your clothes, under your arm, and hold it there until the thermometer beeps, which tells you that the temperature can be recorded, the temperature can be read. So when it beeps, that's the maximum temperature of whatever wherever it is that you're taking your temperature, whether it's your arm or inside the ear, just inside the ear, orally inside the mouth. So you know that the thermometer usually is used for a specific area of the body, not interchangeably. And even if you're using it for your ear, underarm, orally, you would have to sterilize the tip with alcohol to make sure you don't transfer germs from the ear, the mouth, any parts of your body. And especially the rectal reading on the thermometer, which is considered to be the most accurate reading, that's internal body temperature. Of course, you would know a special thermometer has to be assigned just for the rectum, because you know feces exits the body through the rectum. So, but it gives the most accurate body temperature reading. So the thermometer is inserted inside, just inside the rectum, and then when it beeps, we take the reading. Alright, so we have thermometers that record the temperature in the room. So you'll have a thermometer that you can just place on the wall, hang up on the wall, whether it's an analog or digital. And as the temperature in the room changes, it will record that temperature. You can go and take your reading any time of the day. So you know that in the early morning, late evening, night, the temperature will be a little cooler. Typically speaking, in the daytime hours, the temperature might be a little warmer, and it depends too on the type of building, the material that was used to make the building, construct the building. So wood, for example, the natural materials are more breathable, and so they will let out the heat that's generated within the building. It will gradually release that. So those buildings tend to be cooler, and the more space you have in the building, the cooler it is as well. As opposed to, let's say, a concrete building, a brick building, for example, in the tropics, you know, the temperature will be higher. So all of those factors contribute to temperature. But we have a standard temperature that we call room temperature. So room temperature, it's still a range though, because you know, depending on the size of the room, the material of the room, where you live, whether you live in the tropics, in the temperate region, in the polar region, so there is a range. But generally speaking, between 20 degrees to 22 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees to 72 degrees Fahrenheit is considered normal room temperature. The body, however, is warmer than the room, because you know we have activities going on in the body all the time, processes going on that generate their own heats. So body temperature, normal body temperature, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. Again, there is a range. It depends. Let's say you were just doing exercise. Your body temperature will be slightly higher. Let's say you were just out in the sun, working in the sun, in the sunlight, right? Your body temperature will be a little higher than someone who was just resting in the shade or resting inside. So it's a range. It's not just one fixed measurement. So anywhere from, let's say, 36.5, 37, even a little tip over 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And each person too, each individual has their own normal. So for example, some women use measuring their body temperature as a part of their natural birth control, because the body temperature rises at a certain point in the month during ovulation, and then it will get less. So the woman can use that to know when she's most fertile, if she wants to have a baby, when she can have sex, if she doesn't want to have a baby, when she can avoid having sex. She might use other methods in conjunction with that, or some women just use that method. So they record their body temperature every day, and then they look at the pattern to see when their own normal temperature, their own range. Everybody has their personal range of temperature, right? So when they rise in the morning, they'll take their temperature, and they'll gradually throughout the month, throughout their menstrual cycle, see how their temperature changes. When it rises, when it falls, and then she will know when is the best time to have intercourse, whether it is she wants to have a baby or she doesn't. Alright, so we all have our range. Now, a fever is when the temperature is very elevated, and it usually means there's some kind of infection or your body is trying to fight off whether some organism that has invaded, or there's some kind of ill health. Maybe you ingested poison, there's increased activity, your body is trying to flush things out. So then you might have a fever. Now the fever actually is a good sign. It's a sign that your body is working for you, trying to get rid of an organism or a substance that it doesn't want. So fever in itself is not bad. Fever is an indication that your body is working. Alright? So anything over 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius, then we say you have a fever. If the temperature gets too high, so above 39 degrees Celsius or above 100.9 degrees Fahrenheit, then we say the person has hyper. Hyper means more than, too much. Hyperthermia, and thermia, of course, the root word for heat. So hyperthermia, too much heat, and that can lead to death. If the body gets too hot, you become dehydrated, all the moisture in your body dries out, and you will certainly die. The opposite of that is hypothermia, too little heat. So that happens, maybe you're out, you got caught in the snow without your protective wear, or you got locked in a freezer accidentally. It has happened. Things happen to people, strange things happen. Maybe you get locked in a freezer, you get caught in a blizzard and you have no way of protecting yourself. You're exposed to the snow, you get frostbite on your fingers and toes. Gradually your body will lose its own internal temperature. It can't regulate its temperature anymore, and you will get hypo, too little heat in the body. That also can lead to death. So our bodies are always trying to regulate the temperature within it, its own internal body temperature, to keep us alive. Alright, to make sure the processes continue. Alright, now temperature can be above or below zero. Usually when we think of zero, we think of nothing, and we're saying, well, surely there can't be anything below nothing. Well, in temperature there actually is. So water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius, right? And if it was frozen already, it would start to melt at 0 degrees Celsius. So it's a freezing point of water. So water is a universal standard in terms of many things. We use the behavior of water to judge the behavior of other substances. So 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius, that's when water begins to freeze. Or if it was frozen, that's when it begins to melt, if the temperature is going to keep rising. Alright, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. That's when water starts changing its state from liquid to gas, to steam, to water vapor. Alright, so if you boil it, put it on the stove, once it gets to 100 degrees Celsius, it will start becoming vapor. To start boiling, and then the process of becoming a vapor. Alright, so let's look at the thermometer. So over here we have a digital thermometer. So of course you would have the little section where you would insert the tip, the metal tip, either in the ear, the mouth, the rectum, under the arm, anywhere on the body that is really like closed in, under your arm or inside, getting an internal reading is a good place to put a thermometer. Always remember though to sterilize at least the tip of the thermometer with alcohol. Put alcohol on cotton and sterilize before you take your reading, and you'll get the reading in degrees Celsius as well as degrees Fahrenheit. If you're using the analog thermometer, and in many cases this would be the room temperature thermometer, right? So you would watch the liquid inside the thermometer. Rarely it would be mercury. I don't think that's used so much nowadays. Usually alcohol or some other substance that behaves a particular way when heated, right? So we wouldn't just use any old substance. We'd use something that reacts in a particular way to heat. And so that liquid inside the thermometer will rise and fall according to the temperature. So if it gets very, very hot, you'll see it rising, and then when the temperature falls, you'll see it coming back down. And you take your reading along the left if you want the reading in degrees Celsius. If you want the reading in degrees Fahrenheit, you just come over to the Fahrenheit scale and take your reading, right? And you get your temperature. All right, so let me make sure I went through all my notes. All right. Okay, so that's it for temperature, right? So temperature comes under measurement. It's a way of measuring the degree of hotness or coldness in the body or in the room, right? So remember, there's a range. There's a range that's considered normal, and then above that range is abnormal, which can cause very dangerous situations. Below the range is also abnormal and can also cause very serious situations. So if you have benefited from this video, just drop a line to say, "Thank you, Miss, for your efforts." And let me know in the comments if you want me to do a video on any particular topic, right? If you haven't subscribed to the Kemet Maasai Academy channel, please do so now, and share the video so other students may benefit just like you did. So thank you, scholars, for joining me again, and I'll see you in the next video.